Hello, this is Jenna Lemire, and I am reading Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life. I have the second edition. This is by Marshall B. Rosenberg, PhD. And so far, I have read all through to chapter 6, and this now will be chapter 6. I am reading this aloud, not because I am a good reader, but because I am a part of a group where there's a lot of people who may benefit from kind of a parallel play or being able to be read to is how they may take information in. I know that for me, I like to be read to, and that helps me. So if this helps anyone, awesome. Whether it's in this group I'm doing it for or someone else that just happens to find it on YouTube. Okay, so chapter 6. Requesting that which would enrich life. We have now covered the first 3 components of NVC that address what we are observing, feeling, and needing. We have learned to do this without criticizing, analyzing, blaming, or diagnosing others, and in a way most likely to inspire compassion. The fourth and final component of this process addresses the question of what we would like to request of others in order to enrich life for us. When our needs are not being fulfilled, we follow the expression of what we're observing, feeling, and needing with a specific request. We ask for actions that might fulfill our needs. How do we express our requests so that others are more willing to respond compassionately to our needs? Using positive action language. First of all, we express what we are requesting rather than what we are not requesting. Oh my God, this is so big. Because if we focus on what's not wanted, I hate it when you blah, 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 or then we're actually placing focus on what's not wanted, which we're just going to get more of what's not wanted, right? How do you do a don't? Good point. Goes a line of a children's song by my colleague Ruth Biebermeyer. All I know is I feel won't when I'm told to do a don't. These lyrics reveal 2 problems commonly encountered when requests are worded in the negative. People are often confused as to what is actually being requested, and furthermore, negative requests are likely to provoke resistance. A woman at a workshop, frustrated that her husband was spending so much time at work, described how her request had backfired. She asked him not to spend so much time at work. 3 weeks later, he responded by announcing that he'd signed up for a golf tournament. She had successfully communicated to him what she did not want, his spending so much time at work, but had failed to request what she did want. Encouraged to reword her request, she thought a minute and said, I wish I had told him that I would like to spend time at least one evening a week at home with the children and me. During the Vietnam War, I was asked to debate the war issue on television with a man whose position differed from mine. The show was videotaped, so I was able to watch it at home that evening. When I saw myself on the screen communicating in ways I didn't want to be communicating, I felt very upset. If I'm ever in another discussion, I told myself, I am determined not to do what I did on that program. I am not going to be defensive. I'm not going to let them make a fool of me. Notice how I spoke to myself in terms of what I didn't want to do rather than in terms of what I did want to do. A chance to redeem myself came the very next week when I was invited to continue the debate on the same program. All the way to the studio, I repeated to myself all the things I didn't want to do. I do this all the time. As soon as the program started, the man launched off in exactly the same way that he had the week earlier. For about 10 seconds after he finished talking, I managed not to communicate in the ways that I had been reminding myself. In fact, I said nothing. I just sat there. As soon as I opened my mouth, however, I found words tumbling out in all the ways that I had been so determined to avoid. It was a painful lesson about what can happen when I only identify what I don't want to do without clarifying what I do want to do. I was once invited to work with some high school students who suffered a long litany of grievances against their principal. They regarded the principal as a racist and searched for ways to get even with him. A minister who worked closely with the young people became deeply concerned over the prospect of violence. Out of respect for the minister, the students agreed to meet with me. They began by describing what they saw as discrimination on the part of the principal. After listening to several of their charges, I suggested that they proceed by clarifying what they wanted from the principal. "What good would that do?" scoffed one student in disgust. "We already went to him to tell him what we wanted. His answer to us was, 'Get out of here. I don't need you people telling me what to do.'" I asked the students what they had requested of the principal. They recalled saying to him that they didn't want him telling them how to wear their hair. I suggested they might have received a more cooperative response if they had expressed what they did rather than what they did not want. They had then informed the principal that they wanted to be treated with fairness, at which he had become defensive. Here's a word I don't know. Vociferously denying ever having been unfair. I ventured to guess that the principal would have responded more favorably if they had asked for specific actions rather than vague behavior like fair treatment. Working together, we found ways to express the request in a positive action language. At the end of the meeting, the students had clarified 38 actions that they wanted the principal to take, including, "We'd like you to agree to Black student representation on decisions made about dress code, and we'd like you to refer to us Black students and not as you people." The following day, the students presented their request to the principal using the positive action language that we'd practiced. That evening, I received an elated phone call from them. Their principal had agreed to all 38 requests. In addition to using positive language, we also want to avoid vague, abstract, or ambiguous phrasing and to word our requests in the form of concrete actions that others can undertake. A cartoon depicts a man who has fallen into a lake. As he struggles to swim, he shouts to his dog on the shore, "Lassie, get up." In the next frame, the dog is lying on a psychiatrist's couch. We all know how opinions vary as to what constitutes helps. Some members of my family, when asked to help with the dishes, think help means supervision. A couple in distress attending a workshop provides an additional illustration of how nonspecific language can hamper understanding and communication. "I want you to let me be me," the woman declared to her husband. "I do," he retorted. "No, you don't," she insisted. Asked to express herself in positive action language, the woman replied, "I want you to give me the freedom to grow and be myself." Such a statement, however, is just as vague and likely to provoke a defensive response. She struggled to formulate her request clearly and then admitted, "It's kind of awkward, but if I were to be precise, I guess what I want is for you to smile and say that anything I do is okay." Often the use of vague and abstract language can mask such oppressive interpersonal games. A similar lack of clarity occurred when a father and his 15-year-old son, when they came in for counseling. Similar lack of clarity occurred between a father and his 15-year-old son when they came in for counseling. "All I want is for you to start showing a little responsibility," claimed the father. "Is that asking too much?" I suggested that he specify what it would take for his son to demonstrate the responsibility that he was seeking. After discussion on how to clarify his request, the father responded sheepishly, "Well, it doesn't sound so good, but when I say that I want responsibility, what I really mean is that I want him to do what I asked without question, to jump when I say jump, and to smile while doing it." He then agreed with me that if his son were to actually behave this way, it would demonstrate obedience rather than responsibility. Like this father, we often use vague and abstract language to indicate how we want other people to feel or be without naming a concrete action that they can take to reach that state. For example, an employer makes a genuine effort to invite feedback, telling the employees, "I want you to feel free to express yourself around me." The statement communicates that the employer's desire for the employees to feel free, but not what they can do in order to feel this way. Instead, the employer could use positive action language to make a request, like, I'd like you to tell me what I might do to make it easier for you to feel free to express yourselves around me. As a final illustration of how the use of vague language contributes to internal confusion, I would like to present a conversation that I would invariably have during my practice as a clinical psychologist with the many clients who came to me with complaints of depression. After I emphasized with the depth of feelings that a client had just expressed, our exchanges would typically proceed in the following manner. What are you wanting that you're not receiving? I don't know what I want, says the client. I guess that you'd say that, uh, Marshall said. Why? The client said. My theory is that when we get depressed because we're not getting what we want, and we're not getting what we want because we've never been taught to get what we want. Instead, we've been taught to be good little boys and girls and good mothers and fathers. If we're going to be one of those good things, better get used to being depressed. Depression is the reward we get for being good. But if you want to feel better, I'd like you to clarify what you would like people to do to make life more wonderful for you. Interesting. Client says, I just want someone to love me. That's hardly unreasonable, is it? Marshall says, it's a good start. Now I'd like you to clarify what you would like people to do that would fulfill your need to be loved. For example, what could I do right now? Client says, oh, you know. And then Marshall says, I'm not sure I do. I'd like you to tell me what you would like me or others to do to give you the love that you're looking for. Client says, that's hard. Marshall says, yes, it can be difficult to make clear requests, but think how hard it would be for others to respond to our request if we're not even clear what it is. Client says, I'm starting to get clear on what I want from others to fulfill my need for love, but it's embarrassing. Marshall says, yes, very often it is embarrassing. So what would you like for me or others to do? Client says, if I really reflect upon what I'm requesting, when I ask to be loved, I suppose I want you to guess what I want before I'm even aware of it. And then I want you to always do it. Marshall says, I'm grateful for your clarity. I hope that you can see how you are not likely to find someone who can fulfill your need for love if that's what it takes. Very often, my clients were able to see how the lack of awareness of what they wanted from others had contributed significantly to their frustrations and to their depression. So, making requests consciously. Sometimes we may be able to communicate a clear request without putting it into words. Suppose you're in the kitchen and your sister, who is watching television in the living room, calls out, I'm thirsty. In this case, it may be obvious that she is requesting that you bring her a glass of water from the kitchen. However, in other instances, we may express our discomfort and incorrectly assume that the listener has understood the underlying request. For example, a woman might say to her husband, I'm annoyed that you forgot the butter and onions when I asked you to pick them up for dinner. While it may be obvious to her that she is asking him to go back to the store, the husband may think that her words were uttered solely to make him feel guilty. Even more often, we are simply not conscious of what we are requesting when we speak. We talk to others or at them without knowing how to engage in dialogue with them. We toss out words using the presence of others as a wastebasket. In such situations, the listener, unable to discern a clear request in the speaker's words, may experience the kind of distress illustrated in the following anecdote. I was seated directly across the aisle from a couple on a mini train that carries passengers to their respective terminals at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. For passengers in a hurry to catch a plane, the snail's pace of the train may well be irritating. The man turned to his wife and said with intensity, I have never seen a train go so slow in all my life. She said nothing, appearing tense and uneasy as to what response he might be expecting from her. He then did what many of us do when we're not getting the response that we want. He repeated himself. In a markedly stronger voice, he exclaimed, I've never seen a train go so slow in all my life. The wife, at a loss for response, looked even more distressed. In desperation, she turned to him and said, They're electronically timed. I didn't think this piece of information would satisfy. They're electronically timed. I didn't think this piece of information would satisfy him, and indeed it did not, for he repeated himself a third time, even more loudly. I have never seen a train go so slow in all my life. The wife's patience was clearly exhausted as she snapped back angrily. Well, what do you want me to do about it? Get out and push? Now, there were two people in pain. What response was the man wanting? I believed he wanted to hear that his pain was understood. If his wife had known this, she might have responded, "It sounded like you're scared that we might miss our plane and disgusted because you'd like a faster train running between these terminals." In the above exchange, the wife heard the husband's frustration, but was clueless as to what he was asking for. Equally problematic is the reverse situation when people state their requests without first communicating the feelings and needs behind them. This is especially true when the request takes the form of a question. Why don't you go and get a haircut? Can easily be heard by youngsters as a demand or an attack unless parents remember to first reveal their own feelings and needs. We're worried that your hair is getting so long that it might keep you from seeing things, especially when you're on your bike. How about a haircut? It is more common, however, for people to talk without being conscious of what they're asking for. I'm not requesting anything, they might remark. I just feel like saying what I said. My belief is that whenever we say something to another person, we are requesting something in return. It may simply be an empathic connection, a verbal or nonverbal acknowledgement, as with the man on the train, that our words have been understood, or we may be requesting honesty. We may wish to know the listener's honest reaction to our words. We may be requesting an action that we hope would fulfill our needs. The clearer that we are on what we want back from another person, the more likely it is that our needs will be met. Asking for reflection. As we know, the message we send is not always the message that's received. We generally rely on verbal cues to determine whether our message has been understood to our satisfaction. If, however, we're uncertain that it has been received as intended, we need to be able to clearly request a response that tells us how this message was heard, so as to be able to correct any misunderstanding. On some occasions, a simple request like, "Is that clear?" will suffice. At other times, we need more than, "Yes, I understood you," to feel confident that we've been truly understood. At such times, we might ask others to reflect back in their own words that they've heard what they've heard us say. We then have the opportunity to restate parts of our message to address any discrepancies or omissions that we might have noticed in their reflection. For example, a teacher approaches a student and says, "Peter, I got concerned when I checked my record book yesterday. I want to make sure you're aware of the homework that I'm missing from you. Will you drop by my office after school?" Peter mumbles, "Okay, I know," and then turns away, leaving the teacher uneasy as to whether her message had been accurately received. She asks for a reflection. "Could you tell me what you just heard me say?" To which Peter replies, "You said I gotta miss soccer to stay after school because you didn't like my homework." Woo. Confirmed in her suspicion that Peter had not heard her intended message. The teacher tries to restate it, but first she is careful of her next remark. An assertion like, "You didn't hear me, that's not what I said," or "You're misunderstanding me," may easily lead Peter to think that he is being chastised. Since the teacher perceives Peter as having sincerely responded to her request for a reflection, she might say, "I'm grateful to you for telling me what you heard. I can see that I didn't make myself as clear as I had liked, so let me try again." When we first begin asking others to reflect back what they heard us say, it may feel awkward and strange because requests are rarely made. When I emphasize the importance of our ability to ask for reflections, people often express reservations. They are worried about reflections like, "What do you think I am, deaf?" or "Quit playing your psychological games." To prevent such responses, we can explain to people ahead of time why we may sometimes ask them to reflect back our words. We make clear that we're not testing their listening skills, but checking out whether we've expressed ourselves clearly. However, should the listener retort, I heard what you said, I'm not stupid, we have the option to focus on their feelings and their needs and ask either aloud or silently. Are you saying that you're feeling annoyed because you want respect for your ability to understand things? Requesting honesty. After we've openly expressed ourselves and received the understanding that we want, we're often eager to know the other person's reflection to what we've said. Usually, the honesty we would like to receive takes one of three directions. Sometimes we like to know the feelings that are stimulated by what we said and the reasons for those feelings. We might request this by asking, I would like you to tell me how you feel about what I just said and your reasons for feeling as you do. And then on the side, it says, after we express ourselves verbally or vulnerably, we often want to know A, what the listener's feeling, B, what the listener is thinking, or C, whether the listener would be willing to take a particular action. So those are just kind of like showing you the order, and now they're going to go into it more. Sometimes we'd like to know something about our listeners' thoughts. The first one was about the feelings, because remember they said, I'd like you to tell me how you feel about what I just said and your reasons for feeling as you do. And then it says again, sometimes we'd like to know something about our listeners' thoughts in response to what they just heard us say. At these times, it's important to specify which thoughts we'd like them to share. For example, we might say, I'd like you to tell me if you predict that my proposal would be successful, and if not, what you believe would prevent its success, rather than simply saying, I'd like you to tell me what you think about what I've said. When we don't specify which thoughts we would like to receive, the other person may respond at great length with thoughts that aren't the ones that we're seeking. Sometimes we'd like to know whether the person is willing to take certain actions that we've recommended, such as a request might sound like this. I'd like you to tell me if you would be willing to postpone our meeting for 1 week. The use of NVC requires that we be conscious of the specific form of honesty that we would like to receive and make that request for honesty in concrete language. Making requests of a group. It is especially important when we are addressing a group to be clear about the kind of understanding or honesty that we want back from them after we've expressed ourselves. When we are not clear about the response that we'd like, we may initiate unproductive conversations that end up satisfying no one's needs. I've been invited from time to time to work with groups of citizens concerned about racism in their communities. One issue that frequently arises among these groups is that their meetings are tedious and fruitless. The lack of productivity is very costly for the members, who often expend limited resources to arrange for transportation and childcare in order to attend meetings. Frustrated by prolonged discussions that yield little direction, many members quit the groups, declaring meetings a waste of time. Furthermore, the institutional changes they are striving to make are not usually ones that occur quickly or easily. For these reasons, when such groups do meet, it's important that they make good use of their time together. I knew members of one such group that had been organized to effect change in the local school system. It was their belief that various elements in the school system discriminated against students on the basis of race. Because their meetings were unproductive and the group was losing members, they invited me to observe their discussions. I suggested that they conduct their meetings as usual and that I would let them know if I saw any ways NVC may help. One man began the meeting by calling the group's attention to a recent newspaper article in which a minority mother had raised complaints and concerns regarding the principal's treatment of her daughter. A woman responded by sharing a situation that had occurred to her when she was a student at the same school. One by one, each member then related a similar personal experience. After 20 minutes, I asked the group if their needs were being met by the current discussion. Not one person said yes. This is what happens all the time in these meetings, huffed one man. I have better things to do in my time than sit around listening to the same old bullshit. I then addressed the man who had initiated the discussion. Can you tell me what you brought up in the newspaper article, what response you were wanting from the group? I thought it was interesting, he replied. I explained that I was asking what response he wanted from the group rather than what he thought about the article. He pondered a while and then conceded, I'm not sure what I wanted. And that's why I believe 20 minutes of group valuable time had been squandered on fruitless discourse. When we address a group without being clear about what we're wanting back, unproductive discussions will often follow. However, if even one member of the group is conscious of the importance of clearly requesting the response that is desired, he or she can extend this consciousness to the group. For example, when this particular man didn't define what response he wanted, a member of the group might have said, I'm confused by how you'd like us to respond to your story. Would you be willing to say what response that you'd like from us? Such interventions can prevent the waste of precious group time. Conversations often drag on, fulfilling no one's needs, because it is unclear whether the initiator of the conversation has gotten what she or he wanted. In India, when people have received the response that they want in conversations that they have initiated, they say bus, pronounced bus. Bus. This means you need not say more. I feel satisfied and I am now ready to move on to something else. Bus. I love learning new words. Though we lack such a word in our language, we can benefit from developing and promoting bus consciousness in all of our interactions. Requests versus demands. Requests are received as demands when others believe that they will be blamed or punished if they do not comply. When people hear us making a demand, they see two options, submission or rebellion. Either way, the person requesting is perceived as coercive, and the listener's capacity to respond compassionately to the request is diminished. The more we have in the past blamed, punished, or laid guilt trips on others when they have responded to our requests, the higher the likelihood that our requests will now be heard as demands. We also pay for the use of such tactics by others. To the degree that people in our lives have been blamed, punished, or urged to feel guilty for not doing what others have requested, the more likely they are to carry this baggage to every subsequent relationship and hear a demand in any request. Let's look at two variations of a situation. Jack says to his friend Jane, I'm lonely and would like you to spend the evening with me. Is that a request or demand? The answer is that we don't know until we observe how Jack treats Jane if she doesn't comply. Interesting. Suppose she replies, Jack, I'm really tired. If you'd like some company, how about finding someone else to be with you this evening? If Jack then remarks, how typical of you to be so selfish, his request was, in fact, a demand. Instead of empathizing with her need to rest, he has blamed her. Ooh, this is really good. It's a demand if the speaker then criticizes or judges, as it says on the side here. And how to tell if it's a demand or a request. Observe what the speaker does if the request is not complied with. And then when the other person hears a demand from us, they see two options, submit or rebel. Ooh, this is really good, isn't it? I'm learning something new from this for sure. So consider a second scenario. Jack says, I'm lonely and would like you to spend the evening with me. Jane. Jack, I'm really tired. If you'd like some company, how about finding someone else to be with you tonight? Jack turns away wordlessly. Jane, sensing he's upset, is something bothering you? Jack says, no. Jane says, come on, Jack, I can sense something's going on. What's the matter? Jack says, you know how lonely I'm feeling. If you really loved me, you'd spend the evening with me. Ooh, I am so guilty of this one. Oh my goodness. It's a demand if the speaker then lays a guilt trip. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so helpful in my life. Oh, I can't believe how much I'm guilt tripping. Oh my God, this is like so enlightening me. Okay. Again, instead of emphasizing, Jack now interprets Jane's response to mean that she doesn't love him and that she has rejected him. The more we interpret noncompliance as rejection, the more likely our requests will be heard as demands. This leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy. For the more people hear demands, the less that they enjoy being around us. On the other hand, we would know that Jack's request had been a genuine request, not a demand, if his response to Jane had expressed a respectful recognition of her feelings and needs. Example: so Jane, you're feeling worn out and needing some rest this evening. We can, question mark. And then we can help others trust that we are requesting and not demanding by indicating what we would only want the person to comply if she or could do so willingly. Thus, we might ask, would you be willing to set the table, rather than, I would like you to set the table. However, the most powerful way to communicate that we're making a genuine request is to emphasize with people when they don't respond to the request, or empathize. I think I said emphasize. However, the most powerful way to communicate that we are making a genuine request is to empathize with people when they don't respond to the request. We can demonstrate that we are making a request rather than a demand by how we respond when others don't comply. If we are prepared to show empathic understanding of what prevents someone from doing, as we ask, then by my definition, we have made a request, not a demand. Choosing to request rather than demand does not mean we give up when someone says no to our request. It does mean that we don't engage in persuasion until we have empathized, empathize with what's preventing the other person from saying yes. I want to read that again. That feels important. Choosing to request rather than demand does not mean that we give up on what someone give up when someone says no to our request. It does mean that we don't engage in persuasion until we have empathized with what's preventing the other person from saying yes. Defining our objective when making requests. Expressing genuine requests also requires an awareness of our objective. If our objective is only to change people and their behavior or to get our way, then NVC is not an appropriate tool. This process is designed for those of us who would like others to change and to respond, but only if they choose to do so willingly and compassionately. The objective of NVC is to establish a relationship based on honesty and empathy. When others trust that our primary commitment is to the quality of the relationship and that we expect this process to fulfill everyone's needs, then they can trust that our requests are true requests and not camouflage demands. A consciousness of the objective is difficult to maintain, especially for parents, teachers, managers, and others whose work centers around influencing people and obtaining behavioral results. A mother who once returned to a workshop after lunch break announced, "Marshall, I went home and tried it. It didn't work." I asked her to describe what she had done. "I went home and expressed my feelings and needs just as we'd practiced. I made no criticism, no judgments of my son. I simply said, look, when I see that you haven't done the work you said that you were going to do, I feel very disappointed. I wanted to be able to come home and find the house in order and your chores completed. Then I made a request. I told him I wanted him to clean it up immediately. It sounds like you clearly expressed all the components," I commented. "What happened?" "He didn't do it." "Then what happened?" I asked. "I told him he couldn't go through life being lazy and irresponsible." I could see that this woman was not yet able to distinguish between expressing requests and making demands. She was still defining the process as successful only if she got compliance for her requests. During the initial phases of learning this process, we might find ourselves applying the components of NVC mechanically without awareness of the underlying purpose. Sometimes, however, when we are conscious of our intent and express our request with care, some people may still hear a demand. This is particularly true when we occupy positions of authority and are speaking with those who have had past experiences with coercive authority figures. Oh, this is so big with me. Once the administrator of a high school invited me to demonstrate to teachers how NVC might be helpful in communicating with students who weren't cooperating as the teachers would have liked. I was asked to meet with 40 students who had been deemed socially and emotionally maladjusted. I was struck by the way that such labels serve as self-fulfilling prophecies. If you were a student who had been thus labeled, wouldn't it just give you permission to have some fun at school by resisting whatever was asked of you? By giving people labels, we tend to act toward them in the way that contributes to the very behavior that concerns us, which we then view as further confirmation of our diagnosis. Since these students knew that they had been classified as socially and emotionally maladjusted, I wasn't surprised that when I walked in, most of them were hanging out the window, hollering obscenities at their friends in the courtyard below. I began by making a request. I'd like you all to come over and sit down so that I can tell you who I am and what I'd like for us to do today. About half the students came over. Uncertain that they all had heard me, I repeated my request. With that, the remainder of the students sat down, with the exception of two young men who remained draped over the windowsill. Unfortunately for me, these two were the biggest students in the class. Excuse me, I addressed them. Would one of you two gentlemen like to tell me what you heard me say? One of them turned toward me and snorted. Yeah, you said we had to go over there and sit down. I thought to myself, uh-oh, he has heard my request as a demand. Out loud, I said, sir, I've learned always to say sir to people with biceps like his, especially when one of them is a sports tattoo. That's funny. Would you be willing to tell me how I could have let you know what I was wanting so that it wouldn't sound like I was bossing you around? Huh. Having been conditioned to expect demands from authorities, he was not used to my different approach. How can I let you know what I am wanting from you so that it doesn't sound like I don't care about what you'd like? I repeated. He hesitated for a moment and shrugged. I don't know. What's going on between you and me right now is a good example of what I was wanting us to talk about today. I believe that people can enjoy each other a lot better if they can say what they would like without bossing others around. When I tell you what I'd like, I'm not saying that you have to do it or that I'll try to make your life miserable. I don't know how to say it in a way that you can trust. To my relief, this seemed to make sense to the young man who, together with his friend, sauntered over to join the group. In certain situations, such as this one, it may take a while for our requests to be clearly seen for what they are. When making a request, it is also helpful to scan our minds for thoughts of the following sort that automatically transform requests into demands. And here's some examples. He should be cleaning up after himself. And they kind of italicize the word should. She's supposed to do what I asked. Supposed is italicized. I deserve to get a raise. I'm justified in having them stay longer. I have a right to more time off. So when I did that, that just means it was italicized. When we frame our needs in this way, we are bound to judge others when they don't do as we request. I had such self-righteous thoughts in my mind once when my younger son was not taking out the garbage. When we were dividing the household chores, he had agreed to this task, but every day he would have another struggle about getting the garbage out. Every day I would remind him, this is your job. We all have jobs, etc., with the sole objective of getting him to take out the garbage. Finally, one night I listened more closely to what he'd been telling me all along about why the garbage wasn't going out. I wrote the following song after that evening's discussion. After my son felt my empathy for his position, he began taking out the garbage without any further reminder from me. And here's the song. It says, Song from Brett. If I clearly understand you intend no demand, I'll usually respond when you call, but if you come across like a high and mighty boss, you'll feel like you ran into a wall. And when you remind me so piously about all the things that you have done for me, you'd better get ready. Here comes another bout. Then you can shout, you can spit, moan, groan, and throw a fit. I still won't take the garbage out. Now, even if you should change your style, it's going to take me a little while before I can forgive and forget, because it seems to me that you didn't see me as a human too until all your standards were met. Summary. The fourth component of NVC addresses the question of what we would like to request of each other in order to enrich each of our lives. We try to avoid vague, abstract, or ambiguous phrasing and remember to use positive action language by stating what we are requesting rather than what we are not. When we speak, the clearer that we are about what we want back, the more likely we are to get it. Since the message we send is not always the message that's received, we need to learn how to find out if our message has been accurately heard, especially when we are expressing ourselves in a group. We need to be clear about the nature of the response that we are wanting back. Otherwise, we may be initiating unproductive conversations that waste considerable group time. Requests are received as demands when listeners believe that they will be blamed or punished if they do not comply. We can help others trust that what we are requesting is not demanding by indicating our desire for them to comply only if they can do so willingly. The objective of NVC is not to change people and their behavior in order to get our way. It is to establish relationship based on honesty and empathy that will eventually fulfill everyone's needs. NVC in action. Sharing fears about a best friend's smoking. Al and Bert have been best friends for over 30 years. Al is a non-smoker, has done everything he can over the years to persuade Bert to give up on his 2-pack-a-day habit. Aware during the past year of the increasing severity of his friend's hacking cough, Al finds himself bursting out one day with all the energy and life that had been buried in his unexpressed anger and fear. Al says, Bert, I know I don't know how it's going to go. So hold on. My eyes watering. I have my fan on and anyway, okay. Al says, Bert, I know we've talked about this a dozen times, but listen, I'm scared your damned cigarettes are going to kill you. You're my best friend and I want you around for as long as I can have you. Please don't think I'm judging you. I'm not. I'm just really worried. In the past, when Al had tried to get him to quit, Bert had often accused Al of judging him. Bert, no, I hear your concern. We've been friends for a long time. Al, making a request. Would you be willing to quit? Bert, I wish I could. Al, listening for the feelings and needs preventing Bert from agreeing to the request. Are you scared to try because you don't want to fail? Bert, yeah, you know how many times I've tried before. I know people think less of me for not being able to quit. Al, guessing at what Bert might want to request. I don't think less of you. And if you tried and failed again, I still wouldn't. I just wish you would try. Bert, thanks, but you're not the only one. It's everyone. You can see it in their eyes. They think you're a failure. Al, empathizing with Bert's feeling. It is kind of overwhelming to worry about what others might think when just quitting is hard enough. Bert, I really hate the idea that I might be addicted, that I have something that I just can't control. Al, his eyes connecting with Bert's, nods, head in affirmative. Al's interest and attention to Bert's deep feelings and needs are revealed through his eyes and the silence that follows. Bert, I mean, I don't even like smoking anymore. It's like you're a pariah if you do it in public. It's embarrassing. Al, continuing to empathize. Sounds like you'd really like to quit, but are scared that you might fail, and how that would be for your self-image and confidence. Bert, yeah, I guess that's it. I don't think I've ever talked about it before. Usually when people tell me to quit, I just tell them to get lost. I'd like to quit, but I don't know. I don't want all the pressure from people. Al, I wouldn't want to pressure you. I don't know if I could reassure you about your fears around not succeeding, but I sure would like to support you in any way I can. That is, if you want me to. Bert, yes, I do. I'm really touched by your concern and willingness. But suppose I'm not ready to try yet. Is that okay with you too? Al, of course, Bert. I'd still like you as much. It's just that I want to like you for longer. Because Al's request was a genuine request and not a demand, he maintains awareness of his commitment to the quality of the relationship, regardless of Bert's response. He expresses this awareness and his respect for Bert's need for autonomy through the words, I'd still like you, while simultaneously expressing his own need, I'd like to like you for longer. Bert, well then, maybe I will try again, but don't tell anyone else, okay? Al, sure, you decide when you're ready. I won't be mentioning it to anybody. Oh, isn't that a sweet relationship? I'm like in tears over Bert and Al. So now it's going into some exercises. Exercise 4, expressing requests. To see whether we're in agreement about the clear expression of requests, circle the number in front of any of the following statements in which the speaker is clearly requesting that a specific action be taken. 1, I want you to understand me. Okay. I want you to understand me feels like it is something that is someone's requesting, but it feels vague to me. I don't know what they're going to say because I haven't gone ahead, but it feels vague. Like what does that look like? If somebody said to me, I want you to understand me, I would feel empathy for their situation, but it wouldn't be very clear to me yet on like what that exactly means. So we'll have to see what they say about that. Well, I'll go to it right now. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To me, the word understand does not clearly express a specific action being requested. Instead, the speaker might have said, I want you to tell me what you heard me say. Okay, cool. Number 2, I'd like you to tell me one thing that I did that you appreciate. Okay, so that one feels like a specific request and what they'd like. It doesn't say that they would like them or not afterward, but it also doesn't really super feel threatening. So let's see what they say. If you circle this number, we're in agreement that the statement clearly expresses what the speaker is requesting. Yeah, okay. Number 3, I'd like you to feel more confidence in yourself. Okay, so that is a request, but it's also not being very clear on what that would look like to the person. It's like, what does that look like? So they say, if you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To me, the words feel more confidence does not clearly express a specific action being requested. The speaker might have said, I'd like you to take a course in assertiveness training, which I believe would increase your self-confidence. Okay. Number 4, I want you to stop drinking. Well, that seems pretty direct. The only thing I'd say about that is, again, it doesn't really say how they would feel if they didn't, but I don't know. Yeah, okay, let's just see what it says. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To me, the word stop drinking does not clearly express what the speaker wants. Oh, I see, okay. But rather what he or she doesn't want. Oh, good one, okay. Yeah, okay. I just thought because like it was a clear-cut thing on the drinking, but you're right. It doesn't say, it is still focused on what's not wanted. Anyway, but rather what they don't want. Okay, the speaker might have said, I want you to tell me what needs of yours are being met by drinking and to discuss with me other ways of meeting those needs. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, I like that. That's a good one. Number 5, I'd like you to let me be me. Okay, well, that is like loaded, right? What in the hell does that mean? That doesn't feel direct to me. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To me, the words "let me be me" does not clearly express a specific action being requested. The speaker might have said, I want you to tell me you won't leave our relationship even if I do some things that you don't like. Ah, look at how specific that was. I love this. This is going to help me in my life so much. Can't believe how much I'm doing this wrong. Number 6. I'd like you to be honest with me about yesterday's meeting. Okay. What does that mean? Like, what specifically about it? What are they wanting to know about the meeting? If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To me, the words "to be honest with me" does not clearly express a specific action that is being requested. The speaker might have said, I want you to tell me how you feel about what I did and what you'd like me to do differently. Okay, nice. Number 7, I would like you to drive at or below the speed limit. Okay, that feels pretty direct and clear. And it's an action and they're saying what is wanted. That one feels good to me. If you circle this number, we're in agreement that this statement clearly expresses what the speaker is requesting. Cool. We're getting it, right? Yay. It's 8. I'd like to get to know you better. Okay. How? What does that even mean? So that doesn't feel complete to me. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To me, this sentence does not clearly express a specific action being requested. The speaker might have said, I'd like you to tell me if you would be willing to meet me for lunch once a week. Oh, yeah, see? So that's how the person can get to know them better. And what they're really wanting is like to spend more time getting to know the person. And that was a very specific way that they believe that that's going to come to them. And it's a cool and very specific. Wouldn't it be great if we could all just talk to each other this directly? All right. Love that we're doing this. Okay. Number 9. I would like you to show respect for my privacy. Oh, that's not like, what does that mean? No, that's not clear enough. 9 says, if you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To me, the words "show respect for my privacy" do not clearly express a specific action being requested. The speaker might have said, I'd like you to agree to knock before you enter my office. Okay, so that's talking about what is wanted. I want you to knock. Yeah, perfect. 10, I'd like you to prepare supper more often. Okay, so that's being more often doesn't feel specific enough, but they're close on that one. If you've circled this number, we're not in agreement. To me, the words "more often" does not clearly express a specific action being requested. The speaker might have said, I'd like you to prepare supper every Monday night. Great. It's so awesome. So that's the end of chapter 6. And I love that. So just to recap, that the first part of NVC is observation, and the whole point on that one is to observe without judgment or evaluation. The second one is the feelings, and it's about when we are expressing our feelings, that it's an actual feeling versus actually tangled in with some sort of like, I feel judged. That's an evaluation of how someone else is perceiving us. It's not kind of the result of feeling judged, right? Because feeling judged isn't a feeling. So if we were being evaluated in that way, as if we're feeling like someone's judging us, what would actually the feelings be under there? And when we're feeling judged, there's a deeper one that's an actual feeling, like I feel like powerless. I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. I feel embarrassed. So those would be actual feelings. The third part of NVC is the needs, being able to focus on the needs that are rising from the situation. But that is the part in knowing that whatever our need is, that we have the right to have our needs met. We just have to know that not everybody has to meet our needs, and that but it doesn't mean that we don't still have our needs, and there's a very specific way that we can communicate them. And it's showing us today how to more clearly be able to ask for it with the request, which is the fourth thing. And that is being able to request it in a way that is very clear and focused on what is wanted versus what isn't or hasn't been happening, and that you just don't want it to keep happening in this crappy way. So that's the way I kind of am recapping it all, and we will return for chapter 7 very shortly. Thank you for following along. Mwah.